Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici, welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo, and as you know, my channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. I'm a little bit mixed emotions as I come back from my just a wonderful, wonderful vacation filled with fountain pen activities. And as I was editing and preparing this video, I said to myself, am I going to try to make an epic video and with editing and an almost cinematic documentary style, Hemingway Jones style, who does it very, very well, or even my friend Matthew from Wet Pens. And I realized I don't have that talent. My talent is to wing it, so to speak. My talent is to share with you what I feel, not from a written script, but just out of whatever comes out of this heart of mine. And I've got to tell you that this vacation that I just finished, to me, is the ultimate fountain pen vacation. And what I propose to do with you folks is that I'm going to take you through it in 3 parts, if you will. I will do my best to concentrate on all of the fountain pen interests that we have, and that will form, no doubt, the great majority of my comments and whatever you will be viewing during 3 parts that I propose for you, where I will visit, in fact, 3 of the cities that I visited during my 2-week vacation. Now, just a little background. My vacation essentially started in Rome, where we spent 2.5 days, I would say, with my son, who joined us from Portugal, where he presently resides. So we stayed in a beautiful hotel in Rome and mixed it up. We saw some of the ancient sites in Rome, and at the same time visited 6 destinations, fountain pen destinations that I think are of interest to all of us. The second city that we visited and that will form part of this series is, of course, Naples, where that episode will be dedicated to my visit and interview of and with Nino Marino of Delta, Maiora, Nettuno, Marchiaro. I spent a whole day with Mr. Marino, or with Nino, and his lovely better half, Oksana. We had just a great time. It was a lot of nice memories, and I've got to tell you, the man is extremely generous, and we'll get to it in just a few seconds. And the third major city where I visited an additional 6 fountain pen destinations was Florence. Now, as I mentioned to you, my trip did start in Rome for 2 days, and after that, and I will show you what we did next. You see, this is an itinerary of a cruise that my wife and I embarked on, and it all started in Civitavecchia, which is the port, about an hour away from Rome. And as you can see from the map, the first stop was Naples. The ship then proceeded onto Messina in Sicily, to the island of Malta, where we visited the city of Valletta, up the coast to Sardinia and the city of Cagliari. Then we headed into Spain, Palma de Mallorca, which we then jumped over to Barcelona, entered France, we visited Cannes, and finished the French coast onto Livorno, which is the port, which is approximately an hour and a half away from Florence, which is the third destination that I will be reviewing in detail with you, and returning back to Civitavecchia port, where we disembarked and returned home. So that is essentially the trip that we took, and some beautiful cities, beautiful sites. I've been to several of them already. My wife had not been to several of them. So obviously only 3 cities formed the object of my fountain pen vacation. The others had very little to offer in terms of what we fanatics for fountain pens, inks, and paper would like to see. So I'm going to concentrate on the 3: Naples, Rome, and Florence. Let's start with this first part, which is my visit of Naples. How did it all go down? Well, it all started, I think, July the 28th, which is the first city of Naples. We entered the port, and I was excited. I couldn't sleep. At 5:45 a.m., I sneaked out of our cabin and went onto the deck. Took some pictures. As you can see here, the sun was just rising over that majestic Vesuvius. We were entering the port of Naples. Just a beautiful sight. The ship just slowly entered the Bay of Naples. We saw, saw some fishing boats, which were really the only ones that we could see. Very little noise. Everything was quiet. I mean, even the coffee shop had yet to open. It opened about 6 o'clock. I then got immediately, went and get my first cappuccino of the day. We took some pictures, and having already visited Rome with a very exciting pen haul, which we will discuss in part 2, I used some of those pens to jot down some of my thoughts early that morning in Naples. And as the ship was parking backwards into the pier, ready to leave, when the time comes later in the day, I could see my native town of Sorrento in the distance, in the coast. I could see the island of Procida, which was not too far away, which is another beautiful island in the area of Naples. All is calm. I'm on deck 16. The coffee station is finally opened at 6 o'clock. I get some breakfast, and from the breakfast restaurant, I can see that slowly the ship has docked. I then proceed back to the cabin. We prepare ourselves for our meeting with Nino Marino. Now, we had arranged with Nino Marino, we had arranged to meet Nino right outside of the port. Here's a picture of where exactly we met him. As you can see, the port, you see the ships parked in right beyond, right where the street begins. That's where Nino Marino picked us up with, thank God, an air-conditioned Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Because let me tell you, one of the highlights of this trip was the heat. And I vowed to my wife that I would never again do this kind of an itinerary with that kind of heat. I think it's more appropriate to do it in the month of May or June or September, October, where it's a little cooler, because we had just scorching high temperatures of 37, 38, 39 degrees. In some areas it was more humid than others, but that applied to Italy, to Spain, and to France, and certainly applied to Naples. But early in the morning, it's 9 o'clock. I meet up with Nino Marino. I see him in person. He is accompanied by his lovely better half, Oksana, and we enter the city of Naples. And the first stop he announces for us is, well, folks, we're going to take you to what he believes is the finest coffee shop in the area of Naples, where they offer just an exquisite espresso with some Italian pastry, typical Italian pastry of Naples. And you can see some pictures here of the cafe and the pastries, which are these sfogliatella that we all consumed very quickly and enjoyed tremendously the short visit of this wonderful cafe bar, which was not too far away from the factory or the installations, Nino Marino's installations for Delta, Maiora, Marchiaro, and Nettuno. And that's really where the visit begins. And here are some shots of the front of the factory. Both my wife and I enter it, and the first thing we see when we enter is this kind of archival reception area, where archived in showcases are some of the iconic pieces of Delta, and with this spiraling staircase that leads us into the main office area of Delta. As you can see, we enter Mr. Marino's office, which was an impressive office, starting with what was behind that desk, where so many wonderful ideas were born and continue to be born. This man is a genius. I've got to tell you, Mr. Marino is an eloquent, sophisticated, very generous individual, passionate about his hobby and his business, in a sense. And I think ultimately, yes, he from a very young age, with an engineering background, started in the fountain pen industry, obviously to make a living, and continues to make a living from it. But I firmly believe that it's the passion that drives this man. He has some wonderful ideas. We exchanged so many stories. I mean, we met and stayed there for hours, okay? I mean, the total visit started at 9 o'clock and finished about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So as you can well imagine, during that time, Nino shared with us all kinds of beautiful stories and not so beautiful stories. As we know, with the demise or the bankruptcy of Delta, his baby, in effect. That was it was a sad story to tell, but he told it well, he told it professionally, and some of it we will share it with you, some of it we will not. But the man is just an artist, a craftsman, a technician, an engineer, a marketing wizard, a communication expert. I mean, the man it communicates his message in such a wonderful way. And I just wish I could share with you, and we have some snippets in the English language. Most of it was conducted in Italian because that's what Nino mentioned to me, that he felt more comfortable expressing himself. So we will take you through it step by step, and you will be, and I will be obviously translate what he is saying, and where he does introduce some English, well, we'll introduce the English and we'll let him speak his mind. And I don't know why, because he speaks just an excellent English, and he should not be ashamed at all. He would have been able to conduct the interview in that language, but obviously he preferred his mother tongue, and that's interesting. So the first thing, I think that there are chapters that I'd like to visit in this video, and the first part is going to be the history of Delta. So let's start out with, how did Delta start and where did it all begin? Well, as Nino mentions to me, at a young age of 19, he was working for a company by the name of Lalex, which eventually was bought out, or eventually became Monte Grappa. I will spare you all the details. But he worked for that, essentially Monte Grappa, for about 4 or 5 years. He was a wizard. I mean, he managed to increase sales in a dramatic fashion. And at a young age of 24, 25, he decided that he would start up Delta. And he approached his good friend Mario Musciente, and Delta starts. Now, I've got to tell you that when he describes the history of Delta, he does it with a lot of emotion, and certain things happened that I'm not at liberty to share, just because I feel that it's not appropriate for me to do so. But there's a whole history there. There are good things, wonderful things happened, and some, less wonderful things, put it this way, that ultimately led to the bankruptcy of Delta. Very dark phase of Mr. Marino's life, as he openly admits, where he went from glory, to nothing. But essentially, he founded Delta in 1982. He was the president and founder. He, as I mentioned, was working for the Aquila family. We eventually acquired Monte Grappa, and he recalls that he when he started, he did so with Mario Musciente, a good friend of his, who was a dentist by profession, but who did have some investment funds to invest in this venture. He eventually approached Ciro Matrone, who initially said no, and then Ciro Matrone joined them as another co-founder. And Nino gave Delta, essentially took this small fountain pen company and made it an international brand, an international company known everywhere in the world. He explained that that reputation, unfortunately, was not enough to keep Delta going, for all kinds of reasons, which again I'm not going to get into, but essentially, financial reasons ultimately explained why Delta was forced into bankruptcy. He explained that was a very miserable time in his life. Everything obviously is open when you file for bankruptcy as an operator director of a company. You're under scrutiny from the creditors, from government agencies, etc. And finally, he got through it. The bankruptcy ended. His name was, his reputation had been made, and that he had originally, very slowly, and perhaps even reluctantly, started up, in the business again. But of course, he was shaken, both self-esteem, both financially speaking. He basically had nothing. He explained that in the last days he essentially sold everything of value that he had in order to inject funds to keep Delta going, and it just wasn't enough. So when it all ended, he really had no choice but to proceed with the bankruptcy, and he recalls it very vividly that on August the 6th, 2017, the day of his birthday, was the date of Delta's bankruptcy, official bankruptcy. He recalls being in a restaurant with family members and not having said anything to anybody, not wanting to spoil the event or the occasion. But deep down, you can imagine that on his 60th birthday, after so many years of international reputation, of wonderful artistic, well-crafted writing instruments, and all kinds, of all themes, of all colors, of all materials, this man was crushed. A very proud man, proud of what he had done, but unfortunately, financial bite took him to a place where he certainly did not want to be. But he then recalls very vividly that with the help of his better half, Oksana, which you see in these videos, he stayed in the game. He sought some financial assistance from one of his close friends, and he started up Maiora, which was his new baby, if you will. He eventually, and I'm going fast here, he eventually acquired the Nettuno brand, and he and Oksana slowly but surely started things up again. And he then came into contact with another individual who eventually became one of his partners. And they were operating originally not out of Naples, but in order to save some money, out of the partners' installations in Avellino, which is a city not too far away from the city of Naples, where they figured, why spend rent or pay rent and additional expenses operating in two premises? Let's operate out of the same premises. So for approximately 2 years, he operated out of Avellino. And then one day, he received a call from a good friend, a banker, well positioned in a bank, and this friend and banker asked him whether or not he was still looking for and interested in investors for his new startup. And the investor was just a very wealthy businessman. Let's put it this way, because I'm not sure I can identify him. So he was involved in the high-end fashion brand business, where he manufactured for some of the most well-known fashion brands in the world. And he was introduced to this man, and this man was most interested in investing and in exploiting, in a positive way, what he saw immediately as a genius in Nino Marino. He originally asked for, Nino says, he asked me for a business plan. And I very frankly told him, look, I've been doing business plans for the last 5 years that got me absolutely nowhere. I don't have time to waste on a business plan. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And the businessman understood, and he said, "Well, just give me 3 numbers. What's the number here? What's the magic number that can get us all started?" And so he gave these magic numbers to this investor, and the rest was history. The next step was that this individual called him one day and said, "By the way, did you hear the news?" And he said, "No, what news?" "Well, Delta's assets are up for auction. And I got to tell you," the investor tells, "I have every intention to bid for let's bid for the assets." And, there were others in the game, and I won't mention who, but this investor wanted absolutely to acquire everything that Delta had on sale. So I think he offered an amount which was significantly greater than the minimum amounts that the auctioneers were looking for. They eventually won the bid, to the great surprise and consternation of others who were in the game, and I won't mention whom. They won the auction. They purchased the immovable, the actual factory, all of the inventory, equipment, the brand names, the intellectual property. And that's where this factory that they're presently in, it all began again. And the Delta, who made Dolce Vita famous internationally, was born again. And so after many years of sacrifice, of working 7 days a week and almost 24 hours a day, he and his Oksana were finally back operating Delta. So that essentially was the history, if you will, of how Delta was born and how it was resurrected, if you will. So the next part that I'd like to explore is the factory itself. Now, as he mentions, as we wind ourselves down into the next floor, because everything takes place at lower floors, he says to me, Vincent, without the material to make pens, without material, you have nothing. You have no pens, essentially. So he starts off by showing us that part of the factory where all of the celluloid resins, take a look at this, folks, all the celluloid resins that he had purchased. Here's all the inventory. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of inventory here of all kinds of beautiful resins. He takes a look at this beautiful blue celluloid, which was used for the 25th anniversary pen of Delta that I'm putting up, that you see up on the screen. He then shows us this beautiful green celluloid that he used for the Nettuno Superba emerald. He then shows us this beautiful ruby celluloid that he used for the Nettuno Ruby Superba. And, he's got this orange celluloid that he used for the Delta Circo. And then we take a look at this 100th anniversary Corsani pen celluloid that he used for the Corsani pens, which we will take a look at in just a few minutes. As he mentions, nothing is plastic. It's all turned from these bars or these rods of celluloid resin, which is just a beautiful material in his mind, and which is the best material to use, unlike the Mont Blancs of this world and etc., who have managed to make millions of dollars and sold millions of pens with material that doesn't even come close to to this celluloid. And so that's the materials. And he shows us his ebonite feeds, the materials that he uses for his ebonite feeds. He then takes us to the equipment that he uses. And the first piece of equipment that you see here is where it all begins. It starts with a design, a drawing, measurements, and they take some rods or some bars, they turn them, and they create, with that machine, they create prototypes. It's almost all done by hand with the machine. And from there, we will see that the real production starts. He also shows us the sterling silver band station, the infamous silver center bands used in the Dolce Vita, the Gallery, the Blue Moon pens, that centerpiece, how much sterling silver goes into it, and how much work. It's craftsmanship at its best. He says it's an enormous amount of work to get out every single center band and finish it all to make that famous and iconic Delta part. He then shows us his two big babies, if you will, and these are, when you talk about real volume production, he's got these two huge machines that after you complete the prototypes with that small piece of equipment, these two huge, expensive, specialized pieces of equipment that are run by computer programs, essentially they push and they turn the rods based on the design of the part. So in the computer, you plug in, I'm doing a nib section, and the machine will carve out, if you will, or turn the nib section. So you essentially charge the machine with all these bands or these rods or these bars, and it pushes out what the computer tells them to push out in terms of a specific part. And he explains that every pen is essentially composed of anywhere between 20 and 25 parts or pieces, and that CAD program on that expensive piece of equipment will spit out, if you will, volume production of each of those pieces. The next machine that he's showing is a more specialized piece of equipment that produces not standard form parts, if you will. So if anything has for example, is not a straight cylinder, he uses as the example the Maiora Ultra Ogiva or Jiva, which has a very exclusive form. Well, that doesn't come out of those big machines. It comes out of this smaller, more specialized machine, which involves a lot more hand craftsmanship and to produce these non-standard forms. The next step is all done essentially by hand. You're talking about finishing touches. The rods, the parts that come out of those rods are in their rough state, and they require finishing, and that's essentially done by hand. He then shows us the clip section of the factory. You got these bronze sheets from which you specialized craftsmen craft the clip itself. The sheet is bent and stamped into form, the clip, to which we then add that roller ball, which is a part of almost every Delta pen that we see, that roller clip. We see them in Delta and Maiora pens, and that's where these machines are used. But essentially, it's all really done by hand with welding equipment, essentially. He then He then gets into the polishing aspects of some of the resin, especially the crystal clear demonstrator type of resin, including, for example, crystal clear piston eye windows, if you will. That resin doesn't come out in its natural state as a clear demonstrator resin. It has to be polished outside and inside into this transparent and demonstrator clear resin. The next machine that we see here are the laser machines, which engrave all the pieces, the metal pieces, and essentially you engrave the clips, the nibs, and the finials, and it explains how all of this engraving actually takes place, which involves an enormous amount of work, as one can imagine. He then leads us into what he termed as the electroplating department, where everything gets electroplated. It's you got gold, you've got the silver colored, you've got the ruthenium colors, one imposed over the other, and all of that takes place in that electroplating department. He then takes us to the polishing department. He shows us an old machine, an old Delta machine that's still in use, by the way, and then also takes a look at the two modern pieces of polishing equipment that he has, and he explains how these machines turn and rotate to do the polishing, which all of them produce the polished product. They're put on a sort of a bed where each piece then gets examined by him. He takes a look at every single piece and makes sure that there are no flaws, no errors of any kind, and if he sees any spots, any errors or imperfections, he then returns the piece to be corrected, and that takes an enormous amount of hours of work. In fact, he says that when you do this type of work, you got to stop after a couple of hours because you don't see anymore. So you take a break and come back a bit later, because otherwise you're just not going to spot those imperfections. And there you have, so that's all of the polishing and the finishing. The final department, if you will, is really Oksana's baby, as he called it. She's in control of that particular department. We see here that it's in one section where essentially it's the assembly section, where all the parts get assembled, the pen gets finally put together. There's some quality control there as well. The nibs they take a look at the nibs. They make sure that all the nibs are functional, are tuned, and that is a very important step. And he's very proud of the work that his better half does there, and she's of course extremely proud of all the work she does. She puts in an enormous amount of effort. She's really good at it, and it's as he likes to put it, she's the boss here, and she does a great job of it. So that's the assembly. And while we were in that department, I asked Nino about what happened with this orange pen. What happened with the Dolce Vita? How was the Dolce Vita? How did the Dolce Vita come about? And he explained the story as follows. He says, at that particular time, in roughly 1996, all of the pens were essentially very classic black and gold. What we see in Mont Blanc 149 to 146, the sailor pens, essentially very bland and very classic looking. Even the Watermans are all black, essentially, And one day he gets a call from some supplier, I believe, or some individual that says, look, I've got a batch of this orange crushed resin. Would you be interested in buying it? And, he said, well, what am I going to do with this orange celluloid? It was very unusual. And he said, you know what? Let me buy it. I'll make a limited special edition pen with it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And he called the pen the Colosseum or the Coliseo. And to his great surprise, that pen instantly and immediately sold out. And he couldn't believe the phenomenon. So he was asking one of his distributors, why do you think this is so? And the distributor, he said, at the time, there was no internet. They used basically catalogs. And when you would flip the catalog, page to page, just flip through it, it was pretty bland. The natural color that would come out of the flipping is essentially dark colors. But all of it, if you put an orange pen in there and all of a sudden you flip that catalog, instantly you'll take notice about this orange pen, which sticks out like a sore thumb, if you will. And he explains that for some reason, it was a great novelty at the time and people just went crazy over it. And he immediately sold out that limited edition. Now, back to the drawing board, he had for many, many years tried to figure out what would he be able to do with the Delta brand or with a Delta pen that people would instantly recognize internationally as soon as the pen is shown. Or, somebody's using the pen and say, oh, that's the Delta, And he was looking for that kind of uniqueness that would instantly be able, a person would instantly be able to say, oh, that's a Delta pen. And then he thought about the orange. He said, well, this is a great idea. But of course, in speaking to the distributor, he says, well, wait a minute now, you can't come up with another pen that's orange, because if you do, you're essentially betraying the collector who has bought this Coliseo, which is orange and which is a limited edition. By definition, it should be a limited edition. And you can't all of a sudden start producing a bunch of orange pens, because then the collector who purchased that limited edition is betrayed. So he had to figure out how to do this, because he thought that there was something there that could be exploited. And in speaking and waiting, he figured, a couple of years will go by, people will kind of forget. But the distributor said, well, you got to figure out a way. So he said, well, what if I create a mini pen? And, he says, if you create a mini pen, then you're not betraying the Coliseo and the limited edition. It's a completely different pen. And that's when he created the Dolce Vita, the black cap, orange barrel, but in the mini form. And that completely took me by surprise. I would have thought, I had heard about this mini Dolce Vita, but my view, I thought that he started with the oversize and then, created the medium, the stout, and the mini came afterwards. But no, he explained that the mini, and he showed the mini, he's got it in his hands for 30 years, was the original Dolce Vita. It was this mini that eventually led to the medium, the large, the stout, and the oversize. And then you had the oversize with the fusion nib, etc. So that kind of took me by surprise. But that essentially is the story behind the orange and black Delta. And then from then on, people said, the Dolce Vita. Oh, did you see he was using a Dolce Vita? And of course, the Dolce Vita remains to this day. I have one, which is the DV2, the brand new one. But to this day, it remains my Grail pen that I'm hunting for and that eventually I will get, which, by the way, I did not get on this vacation because I'm really looking to purchase an original Dolce Vita oversize. Although he does tell us when I ask him that it's exactly the same pen. Dimmi qualche cosa. Io lo voglio sapere da te proprio.
Dimmi.
Quella che fai oggi,
Sì,
when I compare it to the original,
yeah.
is it the same thing?
Exactly the same.
Except the nib.
Yeah, exactly. No, not the nib. The nib were from Bock on the original one.
Okay, it wasn't Fusion, the original one.
Yeah, the fusion just
Veniva dopo.
dopo. I patented the fusion nib because it was a great idea of mine
Right.
in 2012.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
many,
that I know I
many,
have. Yeah.
yeah, many,
Yes, I have.
yeah, many years after 2012.
Okay.
I just was thinking about the price, the retail price. Many people would like to buy a Dolce Vita, but the real, original Dolce Vita was provided by gold, solid gold nib. So the price went up. To get it affordable, I thought in steel, but not just steel.
Give it some gold.
Some gold on it. So I patented this like a fusion nib worldwide.
That's smart.
And it was a
That's
great
smart.
success.
Very good idea.
It was a great success.
I have about 20 of them.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, it was a very big project.
Allora,
develop.
because in the original it was a Bach nib.
In the original ones, okay, the first one was Muschler.
Oh,
And
that I
other-
don't even know.
Oh yeah, but
That's a long
at
time.
at that time, Muschler
Another German, though.
was very popular and famous, most famous than Bock. The owner of Muschler company was the cousin of Monsieur Bock,
I
two
see.
cousins. So Muschler went bankrupt, so remained only Bock
Bach.
in Heidelberg, Germany. Okay, then now Bock has been sold by company to Schneider. So they changed everything inside.
And
They are not so.
but Yowo, there's a rumor that says that Yowo and Bach, somewhere along the line, were the same thing.
Muschler,
uh,
le pennine Muschler.
yeah,
They're not the same thing, Yowo and
This is a Muschler nib.
Yeah.
This is very
Oh,
old.
look at that.
These are 40 years old minimum. 40 years old, Muschler.
No, not Yowo and Bach. Schmidt. Is that Bach?
Okay, forget Schmidt.
Yeah.
Schmidt,
It's not Bach.
okay. Mostly Schmidt is just a company producing mechanisms for ballpoints and refills for rollerball,
Converters.
ballpoint. I'm not so sure they produce. I went so many times to the Schmidt company. The nibs that are offering at the Schmidt company are from Bock.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
heard. Yeah.
With their logo
Logo, the
on
Schmidt on it.
Schmidt on it. Why why some people prefer to buy from Schmidt and not from Bock? Because when Schmidt sell a nib unit to you, they guarantee, because are already tested and set it up.
And do you have a minimum to buy from Bach?
You always you have
Yeah,
a
that's the
minimum to
problem
buy.
with Bach.
Always you have a minimum to buy, and it means a lot. A lot
But
of
Nino,
business.
I prefer Schmidt over Bach. I gotta tell you, steel.
Okay,
Talking to you steel.
just because
They
they
tested.
tested and they tuning the nib. They do this kind of job for you. But if you are able you know, to test and tune your
Do
own
it
nib,
yourself.
you do it yourself. Yeah, yeah. But Schmidt doesn't produce. It's the they are selling.
That's what I
They
heard.
are selling Bock nibs.
Nibs. I got you.
But in
Because
my
they're even
o-
less expensive.
But in my opinion, now
Questi nostri.
Jovo is absolutely better than Bock.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I'm coming up with a video. I'm doing a video now.
Yeah.
Sto facendo.
Dammi un condutto Bock e un condutto Jovo. Adesso gli spiego.
I'm doing a video on everything you want to know about nibs. So I'm comparing Yowo,
Yeah.
I'm comparing Schmidt, I'm comparing. So that's important for me to know, you see?
I just would like to show you something very interesting to understand. This is house and feeder
Right?
from Bock, okay? This is the last one that Jovo produced,
Right.
okay? You can see the difference,
Yeah.
okay?
And that's what makes all the difference.
Yeah. Look at this. This is like a swimming pool
Yeah. Yeah.
for
yeah.
the ink to guarantee you a better ink flow.
So
This
it's
is-
in the
this
feed,
is-
the
this-
secret, not even in the metal. It's in the feed.
Absolutely, yeah. The feeder is one of the most important part of
the
nib,
pen.
nib,
The nib section.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we,
Yeah, these new Yowo are really, really
this.
nice.
That's why.
That's why everybody's going with Yowo.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then I can tell you this. This why we are making, you know, our own made in house feeder in ebonite.
With the same swimming pool.
Yeah, look at the
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the precision. This is molded. This is made by mechanics tools. So precise.
Yeah.
And this is better than this one because it's ebonite.
Numero
Right,
6.
right. And that's number 8, eh?
This is number 8, and this is
That's
ebonite
nice.
number 6.
Okay. And is that to fit in a Bock section?
We can
Or-
use
or
in
in a
Jovo
Jovo,
and
a
Bock.
Bock.
Both.
Both.
Both. Yeah.
Okay. And to make your own nibs, will you ever do that? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have to put this on the video. I'm just interested.
No.
Because a lot of are telling me, why are all the Italian pen makers, the recent ones, not making their own nibs anymore?
No. The recent and also the past one. Nobody. Okay, to make a nib, it seems easy.
Yeah.
It is not.
It's not.
Absolutely not. You need, first of all, it is not a reason of money or so much money to invest. We have already made a big project to make the nib in-house with Giovanni Guerriero that has money to make it, you know. We are working with the 6 engineers all together. It is not so easy. Better to say you have to mix technology with skills. It is impossible to make a real good nib just with technology.
I
You
understand.
need absolutely of experts' hands. Okay, to make the tips smooth.
Because the Visconti Homo sapien, the old one, is a disaster.
Yeah, they bought that kind of nibs from Bock in the beginning.
It's not.
And nobody is producing his own nib. Just one is Santini,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
very, very, old tools, equipments, very old. In the beginning
Yeah,
of
and
the last
the nib
century.
is very fragile. It's
Fragile
this-
because
yeah.
the thickness of the gold is very small.
Yeah.
Because they have to save money.
But what about Aurora? Does it make their own nibs?
Absolutely not.
Not, eh?
Absolutely not. They have some old, very old equipments. Let's explain better. We can make our own nibs inside, in-house, no problem. The problem is the cost. We can make nibs. We have, skills and, brain
Right, right.
to make it, no problem. It's impossible. We got the moon.
Right.
So
Right.
the problem is how much it will cost. If you have a special know-how on that kind of production, like Jovo, like Bork, because they are doing this job since
That's all they
100
do.
Yeah. So, and very often they have to redo the production because everything went wrong during the production. With that kind of experience, So you can imagine before you make the right know-how, how much money you have to spend on the nibs?
Yeah, then your pen is going to be unaffordable.
Is it economically convenient for a medium, small pen company to make it?
No, that's not.
Impossible.
It's not possible.
If we just tried, we pay, for example, a gold nib number 6 from Germany, 98 bucks. If we want to do it in-house, it costs a minimum 3 times more. Because
Then your pen is unaffordable.
because you will be always with many waste to redo and redo. How much it costs?
And at the end of the day, the tip is always the same.
The tip in the beginning is always the same. You mean the iridium tip?
Yeah, it's iridium.
Iridium tip. Yeah, but the process starts adjusting the measurements on the tip to obtain all the grades, right grades, the strokes of the pen.
Yeah, no, I know for sure. You gotta work that tip.
The tip starts from 1.7 millimeter. 1.7.
Right.
You have to take off to obtain a stub, italic stub, 1.5. So you have to adjust the measurements just 1 decimal, 1 decimal, 1 centesimo, 1 centesimo, right and left. With this is not enough. You need
The big
like
ones.
a microscope
Yeah, right.
to see, to be precise.
That's
It
interesting.
seems easy.
Yeah.
It is not.
Because a lot of my viewers are saying, why do we see Yovo nibs?
Yeah.
Why do we see Yovo? We don't want Yovo nibs. We want in-house nibs. Facile a dire.
We want in-house nibs. So we started making the first Nettuno, God of the Sea, 6 years ago with our own in-house nib, using some special, very old tools that Stipula, Luca Vitti, gave me 6 years ago. But to make 100, not 100,000, just 100 nibs, perfect, we worked together 3 months.
So there you have it. I thought I'd leave that snippet of English conversation in there just to demonstrate to you the knowledge and the capacities of this man that I've just in one day and just brief conversations I've grown very fond of and admire tremendously. But you hear it from an expert. We all have our opinions on what nib we prefer, etc., and sometimes it's hit and miss, and it depends on our own personal experiences. As I've promised, I'm working on a video on nibs. It's taking a long time, but it's just been interrupted by what's happened in the last couple of weeks and previous reviews, etc. But eventually we'll get to it. But there you have an opinion from an expert, and it'd be interesting to get the expertise of a nibmeister as well. But there you have it. I hope that was interesting. Now the next part of this video, and I thought I'd introduce it in this way, is that we went back to the office of his office after having visited the factory, and he just blew me away. He surprised both my wife and I with two just wonderful gifts. And I don't know if the video will demonstrate it, but I can assure you that I had tears in my eyes when that happened. It just, to me, it was a demonstration of generosity that was not required. I mean, I didn't know this man. He reached out. He said hello. I proposed to him, an interview, and he was more than willing. He did everything in his power. I mean, for God's sakes, he picked me up, in the middle of nowhere in Naples. And the generosity of just showing me everything and explaining everything from my own video and for my own YouTube channel is enough, I think, of a gift. But to give both my wife and I what follows, to me, absolutely blew me away. Now, one thing I think I might do, and you'll bear with me, is that I might leave it all in Italian, just so that the expressions of both my wife and I are true and expressions of the moment. There's not much said being there. He describes the gift that he's giving me and why, etc. And maybe we'll look at it in detail when I show you the pen or the pens. But having said that, please check this out. It's worth watching.
Settimana, da quando ho fatto I messaggi a Vincenzo. Grazie. Ci sono le tue iniziali sulla penna, così non la puoi riciclare, non la puoi dare a nessuno, non la puoi regalare.
Veramente grazie di cuore.
Grazie a te, grazie a voi per essere venuti. Ho pensato, intanto ho messo un pensiero sul certificato di garanzia internazionale dedicato a te, ed è un pezzo unico, nel senso che l'ho firmato ed è timbrato 1/1. Sei in crociera, vedi i mari belli, ma il mare di Napoli non te lo devi dimenticare. Io l'ho intitolata Napoli sì, 1/1. Non ho più neanche un pezzo di quel materiale, dopo te lo faccio vedere, ed è una penna speciale per due motivi. Tranquillo, per due motivi Vince è speciale. Prima di tutto perché è stato il primo materiale fatto da Delta insieme ad un amico bravissimo, un famosissimo architetto che è scomparso pochi giorni fa purtroppo, l'anno passato a miglior vita. Lui ha disegnato per Delta, nel corso di tanti anni, tutta la serie Indigenous People. Era tutta disegnata da Francesco Rienzi di Milano, fraterno amico, nonché grande professionista del design. Lui ha disegnato tutte le Indigenous People. La Indigenous People che ha avuto maggiore successo in Delta è stata Kanaka Maoli, dedicata al popolo delle Hawaii, e insieme io andai con Francesco dal fornitore a Lecco, al nord Italia, per creare questo materiale. Io ho preso un pezzetto, mi era rimasto, di quel materiale che ho fatto un'iconica penna a Sant'Uffo, e ci ho montato su un pennino che non esiste più purtroppo in Delta, ma il pennino storico stampato Molded Embossed Delta, punta M in oro, in oro placcato rodio. Quindi hai una penna a stantuffo, pennina in oro, ce l'hai con finestra trasparente per il controllo del livello di inchiostro, fascia in argento massiccio fatta apposta per te. Fatta apposta per te. Nel materiale che io adoro, anche perché è stato, ti ripeto, il materiale che ha ottenuto maggiore successo nella storia delle nostre penne.
Guarda,
Riflette un po'
bellissimo.
le acque del mare che ci circondano.
This is
Tutto quello che è assemblato con grande maestria è opera di Oksana, sia per la penna di Wally che per la penna tua.
artista. Non c'è niente altro da dire. Questi non sono penne. Non sono penne.
Piace. Questa puoi anche usare con post-it, con il cappuccio calzato,
Come
vuoi.
ma questa qui
come vuoi.
farà un video speciale.
Perché
Ti ringrazio Nino, non so come, non c'ho parole.
grazie a voi per essere qui.
Non c'ho parole.
Grazie a voi per essere qui.
Thought I'd give you just a closer up look at the pens. I know these pens are not for sale and may not interest many of you, but just to show you the generosity of this man, this is the Maiora ballpoint pen that he gifted to my wife. Beautiful black resin, and then you've got this beige resin. I think it's used in the Bella Notte, but I'm not sure. Look at that, sterling silver plated 24 karat gold clip, beautiful center band with my wife's initials WR embossed in gold. There you have it. Turn. Very nice pen. My wife will cherish this forever. Going to get it into use, and he actually said, don't worry about it. If you want another one, you just call me and I'll get you one. So there you have it. That's my wife's gift, and here's mine. Just a beautiful, this resin, he explained, he had one last bar or rod left, and he had just enough material to make my pen. That's it. It's got no more of it. Originally used in the indigenous people series Kanoki Maoli, a Hawaii pen, if you will. Take a look at that. Just beautiful, beautiful resin. And I don't know if you can see this, but let me just close up here. Embossed right here is, actually, let me just close up. Is Napoli C, 1 of 1, and of course it's got the Delta Napoli right there as well, and it does have my initials somewhere. Was it on the barrel? I believe it's on the barrel. Just give me a second here. You know, right there, the cap. Oh, it's upside down. Here you have it. VG is embossed. Beautiful finial. Take a look at this nib. This is the 18 karat rhodium plated medium-sized nib. That nib is with ebonite feed. It's just a perfect. I'll show you how it writes. So this is the Delta Napoli C, 1 of 1, and it's a medium, 18 karat original. Delta branded nib, at that time made by Bach. And he mentioned that this pen can write no matter how you turn this, which is a big change or enormous contrast with the Lamy 2000, which has a sweet spot and which I hate. Look at the reverse writing on this thing. I mean, it writes as smoothly as it does the other way around, except it gives you a kind of an extra fine line. So thank you, Nino. This, of course, will be cherished by me forever. I mean, this is just beautiful, beautiful pen. There you have it. Now, what happened next was we left the factory. We needed to move. He had offered to take me out for lunch. I insisted that I should be paying for it. He said absolutely not. And he took me to one of the best restaurants in Posillipo, which is the, you know, a very, it's probably the chicest neighborhood in Naples, up on the other side of the bay, where he resides. And Rosalia is just a great restaurant. So I'll show you some pictures here of the restaurant and of us sharing. Just an excellent meal, by the way. And then he said, as the end, I will take you to a tour of the Neapolitan site from the top. You can see the bay, see the Vesuvius, and you can see the pictures there. And then he drove us a little bit around the city of Naples and some of the more well-known spots, and took us right before the port entrance doors. We said goodbye. We promised that we would keep in touch, and I certainly will. In fact, he was just leaving a couple of days later for Calgary, Canada, believe it or not, where I believe his better half's son lives. So they were going on vacation there for Calgary. So I was going back to Canada, home, and he was going to Canada on vacation. What a coincidence. I was hoping he'd be in Montreal, but that's not part of his trip. Yeah, obviously, if he ever finds a way to be in my city, I will be the first to reciprocate, with no doubt. There you have it, folks. This is the end. Just a beautiful souvenir that I have of the man, of the Delta factory. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little more personal, and it may not be of general public interest, but I think the way, at least the factory portion of this video demonstrates you the enormous work that goes into manufacturing a pen. It looks simple, and we're easy to judge, and we're easy to criticize often. But there's an enormous amount of craftsmanship, of design, of work that goes into manufacturing a good writing instrument. And I hope that this visit of Nino Marino's installation demonstrates that. Stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 is Rome. 6 destinations that I visited there. Part 3 will follow, which is Florence, with another 6 destinations. Make sure you catch on that. I will shock you with the grail pen hunting that I did, and with the pen haul that I came back with. So please stay tuned. Some interesting video viewing there. Subscribe if you haven't. Click on that button if you enjoyed this. And ciao, arrivederci. See you next time.